Hello, great entrepreneurs. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. At whatever time that you are watching us, we welcome you back to this platform. And from the Altocom Bootcamp, we present to you follow-up sessions from the masterclasses we have been having. And this is the first session that we had. My name is Lilian Wairimu, and I will be the host for this session. So today we are going to talk about Just Start. This is the first session that we had few months ago, and we had Mr. Anthony Njagi, who took us through that session, and he is an author of 3 books. The first book is What Kenyan Entrepreneurs Never Tell You. The second one is Street Smart Entrepreneurs, and the third book is Thriving Entrepreneurs. He is the MD of Altocom Technologies here in Kisii. And karibu sana, Mr. Anthony.
Thank you very much, Lilian. It's good to have you. And it's good to be here to discuss, of course, the master classes that we've been having. For those who are new here, we have been running a series called the Altocom Business Masterclass. And the first topic, as Lilian rightly said, we were delving on the whole topic of starting a business, just start, how to start, if you may. And yes, I'm excited to be here to shed more light on what we discussed in that masterclass. Thank you, Lilian.
You are welcome. And just to put an icing on the cake, since we did that first class, there are people who started their businesses immediately. Some took a week, a month, but we are glad that after the third class that we had, there are people who have started their master classes, their businesses, and we really thank God for that. So during the masterclass, you said one thing that captured most people's ears. Start with what you understand. So how do we get started in business?
Yes, Lilian, I'm a strong advocate of starting with what you understand. I have seen out of experience people who put their money in areas where they did not understand how the money is going to be made. And that is how, pyramid schemes have thrived in the past. That is how people have put money in ventures that were otherwise not legit ventures, but scams. I have also myself generously shared, especially in the first book, What Kenyan Entrepreneurs Never Tell You, about a time that I put my money in a fish business. We were hiring some, fish ponds, fish cages in the Lake Victoria. And at that time, we were putting in an investment of, I think 120,000 per cage. Then somebody was supposed to watch over those cages. And after 6 months, the projected harvest was supposed to bring us incomes of the upwards of 750,000 per cage, from an initial investment of 120. And it sounded so good. And I remember a friend of mine and I dipped our hands in the same, of course, expecting that we would earn quite the amounts. And I remember that time they would tell us, the projection is that we are going to introduce 2,500 fingerlings. In 6 months' time, these fish, the least amount we can sell will be 300 bob per fish, bringing, of course, the 750,000 that I talked about. But little did we know that this investment was actually supposed to make money, only it was not supposed to make money for us. The lady who was in charge of the cages, we later came to learn that she would wait until, the fish had grown to a particular size. Then she had a fish pond just near the lake. Imagine, she had a fish pond just by the lake. And when fish attained that plate size, that is by the 4th, 5th month, they would be, harvested, put in the fish pond. And then she would reintroduce fingerlings to our cages. But when customers would call, she would sell what she had already put in the cage, I mean in the fish pond. And we continued waiting for our fish to grow. I think we've made our first visit 5 months down the line. And we wondered, hey, is this a 5-month-old fish? Because our cages were they were having fingerlings, right? But they looked too small for 5-month-olds. And I remember that time she telling us that she had forgotten one important detail, which is we needed to send her some 50,000 package again for feeds. And we started realizing that really these were now being taken for a ride. So I realized that I had invested in a business that I did not understand. I did not understand the dynamics of the fish business. And to say the least, kilituramba, yes, that's what they say, kilituramba, or basically we lost it. In fact, I remember the much we scooped out of those fish cages was 30,000 in one. The other one, we actually even left it because we felt it was not worth it. We actually had to sell the fish in crates because they were still small by the 6th month. We sold them in crates, and I don't know how the sellers would now go and resell them, but that was it. I invested in a business that I did not understand, and that is only one instance. There are so many instances in which I and friends I know have invested in things that they did not fully understand the process of, and eventually we translated to loss. So yes, start with what you understand always. Yes.
And with starting a business, I understand that one needs capital. One needs to know what they want to do. So you could now tell us, how do we raise capital to start the business that we want to start?
A very common question. Interestingly, my best man, Dr. Kevin Obiero, sent me a book recently. Almost done with it. The book is called The $1 Million Weekend by Noah Kagan. And it's interesting because when I was reading that book, one key thing stood out. And there's a place the author says some people are so fixated on making their first million that they never make the step to make the first dollar. And that is a challenge with many people. When they think of capital, they think of capital as something to help them run very big businesses. I mean, talk to any average campus guy. They'll tell you, I want to start a business. I don't have capital. You ask them, which kind of business would you love to start? I would love to start an electronics business, but I don't have capital. I would love to start a salon and spa. I don't have capital. And over time, I have realized that actually that's the wrong approach, because big things start small. Big things start small. There's an author who wrote and said, those little feet, they'll not be little forever. Of course, she was referencing to children. And for some of us who already have children, you know that those little feet, when a baby is being born, the feet are really small, but they won't be little forever. What I believe and I have always advocated for is start with what you have. It could be very little. I mean, here I want to start an electronics business, but from that help, for instance, for comrades. Can I buy even 5 earphones, for instance? Just 5 earphones. Make a lot of noise about the kind of business that I do. I sell earphones, I sell cables, I sell chargers, I sell phones. And when somebody orders for what I have advertised, can I be sharp enough to liaise with people in the nearby town, people who are, of course, already doing the business? Oh, the person even that you bought the earphones from. Can I be sharp enough to liaise with them so that whenever I get an order, I quickly move and get what is on demand? Rather than imagining that I have to start with a shop that I have to really stock and have a lot of stuff, for the name. So the thing is, I have always thought and believed, and by practice also, that if you want to get into a new space in business, start with what you have. It could be very little. Start either with 2 earphones, but know the people who are selling them in wholesale, and craft relationships with them so that whenever something is actually ordered for, I can quickly process that order. That is efficient. It ensures that you don't have dead stock. It ensures that you actually bring what people actually need. There's a guy called Eric Ries who has written a very wonderful book called The Lean Startup. Lean. Jebamba, lean startup. And he talks about starting with a minimum viable product. When you want to launch a new product into the market, start with the minimum viable one. But in our African context, I would say start with the minimum viable business. He talks about MVP. I'll talk about MVB, a minimum viable business. And a minimum viable business just needs to have 2 items, and then they advertised aggressively. I have a friend of mine who is in campus, and he does exactly that. I'll mention his name. He's a Meditech, and I see he has very little in stock, but he has so much in terms of what he advertises. And when customers ask for a product, he knows where exactly to get it at that time. And sometimes he even has partnerships with people who are in town selling those things that he intends to sell. And he just tells them that as you sell, please make sure that I get a profit out of the same. Granted, I believe that's a viable business model for him. And it works because he does the hard work of marketing. He does the hard work of, packaging the products. He does the hard work of convincing people so that by the time this client is coming to the shop, as it were, they are already convinced. They already know the price. And for him, you of course get something out of, the marketing efforts. Now, I talked about a guy who wants to start a salon and spa. How do you plan to start? Could you start by first getting the skills that are requisite for the same? And start by, working just around the people who you are schooling with, or your colleagues, as it were. Let them know that you can actually make hair. Let them know that you can do nails. Let them know that you can do this beauty stuff. And as you continue, a day will come when they'll be the ones to tell you that, hey, we think you should have a place. But before you get to that place where people tell you should have a place, then you should not have a place. You should start by where you are, start with what you have, be consistent, build a network, invest in networking, get referrals. And by the time that you will be needing the capital that you think that you need right now, it will be so clear that at that time, you actually need to get to a place. And at that time, there will be so many partners because there will be people who have already believed in your vision and your business will already have started off. So the key thing is start with what you have, start small. And remember that those little feet, they will not be little forever. Yes.
That is quite insightful and remarkable to see. Now, there are people who have capital. They have the idea. I can say they have what it takes to start a business. But they have the fear of what business entails. Probably they have seen businesses fall. They have seen businesses turn around, and they have the fear of getting into business. They have the capital, yes, and the idea. So how do they overcome this fear and just starting, as you have said?
The fear of starting is real. Because of the fear of failure, which is inherent in all of us. Nobody loves failing. But I remember, again, I have to reference this book, especially because it was given by a person I highly regard, and a person who has been instrumental in my entrepreneurship journey. So whenever he sends me something, I know that this is worth looking at, even with a third eye. And the guy, the author of that book, Noah Kagan, talks about how his father taught him about business. And his father had a failure target, He had a target of the number of failures that he should experience in a week, rejections as it were. The father was selling photocopiers. And he would go to a place and try to sell, purposely with an intention to be rejected. Because he believed that out of these many rejections, there's a way you build the muscle for first, not taking for granted acceptances, but number two, accepting that people they don't owe you anything. They don't owe you anything. You don't have to buy from me just because I'm your friend. I don't have to buy you just because you're my friend. We buy from people because the value proposition actually makes sense to us. And so Noah Kagan says that when he was in campus, when he was now in college, he actually started something which he still challenges people to do. And he said that he would tell his colleagues, let's go, and for every place that we have been making purchases, be it the coffee shops, be it places where we take lunch, we are going to ask for 10% discount. You know, who goes to a hotel and asks for a 10% discount? I mean, you are in Dallas Premier, you've been served, and after you're served, you start negotiating for 10% discount. Who does that? But they would do that purposely to be rejected. And he says that as they got more rejections, it even became more exciting. You know, some of us, if you're rejected, you become depressed. But for him, he would have a target of rejections. And I see that as a very key thing. Actually, I have unconsciously also realized that I'm doing the same. I think, Lillian, is the time I took you guys out and we said that we want to make this girl smile. And there's that girl who was serving us, and I kept on talking to her, and initially she was cold. Of course, that day she never smiled. By the next time we went there, you remember she smiled the first moment she saw us. Huh? Yeah. So really, the aspect of anticipating rejection is key to overcoming fear of failure. So start a business. Go to people you know will not buy. And as they reject you, just look at it as an achievement. I mean, I knew they would reject. So over time, you start enjoying acceptances because you have also learned to live with fears. In fact, it gets to a place where you realize that the only thing that you need to fear is fear itself. And it gets better with time. I am in a place in business where I don't think rejections really take me off because I understand people can buy, people can fail to buy. It's fine. It's them. It's them. It's not, the problem is not me. And I know also one of the books that we have read and I have always recommended to people that I work with is The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. And he talks about the same thing, rejection and persistence. Until you overcome the fear of rejection, you will always have fear, the fear of starting. So start, get rejected, keep moving, keep growing. Yes.
So that we start the day by embracing it.
Yes, I will embrace this day with love in my heart, you know. Yes, Og Mandino.
I think that book was quite insightful. You should get that book and read it. So we have started the business. How do we scale up?
Scaling up is a natural expectation in any business. Again, those little feet will not be little forever. When you read the book Thriving Entrepreneurs, chapter 3, I have titled the chapter in a very interesting way. Let the business grow. That's another way of saying let the business scale up. As you start doing business, one of the key things that you need to do is to document every single process that happens in that business. Have as much data as possible. Have as many data points about your clients, about people who are bought from you. In fact, don't be afraid to ask people, by the way, why did you buy from me? Because obviously, I mean, they had options.
Yeah.
And I've always told people that when you start a barbershop, don't be offended that your friends are not coming to the barbershop because they already were getting shaved somewhere. And so if one eventually comes, don't be afraid to ask them, why did you come? And as they tell you, the reason I came was this. The reason I came was because you followed up. They know that follow-up is a very key thing in scaling up. If somebody tells you that they came because they were referred by someone, they know that, oh, kumbe referrals work.
Yeah.
Invest more time in referrals. If somebody tells you that they came because they liked how you talked in a particular forum, probably you've been doing talks and that kind of thing, they know that, oh, kumbe networking events, they work towards scaling up a business. So scaling up should be a natural consequence of starting. But it's important to have as many data points as possible about your clients. And it's important to keep the channels active. I know in one of the YouTube videos that we'll be having, I know one time we'll talk about the business model canvas, and we'll talk about one of the 9 building blocks of a business is actually what we call the channels. What are the channels that you use to reach your customers? But more importantly, there's something called customer relationships. How do you maintain relationships with your customers? And one of the things that you need to know and to do as you maintain relationships with customers, of course, is a regular follow-up, constant follow-up. There are people who buy because you followed up. There are people who buy because you followed up. So as you start a business, keep the first customers very close. Do as many interviews with them as possible. Those are the people that will become your first referees. And again, I know in another masterclass, we'll also be talking about, the stages of brand development. And one of the most important ones is the brand advocacy, where people now start talking about your brand to others. But the thing is, scaling up comes after we have decided to know what we are doing right. And if we know that what we did right works at some point, then we keep doing that same thing. And the natural consequence, of course, or result will be that our businesses will scale up. Yes.
Wow. Even as we come to a close of this video, you talked about vision and provision. You talked about a business having a vision and how the provision just comes once you have the vision. And this is to mean that every businessman or every businesswoman out there, every entrepreneur should have a business. So you could conclude with how vision plays a key role in businesses.
I am a serious believer, and I believe that vision unlocks provision. And look at your life, things that you ever, trusted God for. Chances are that if they were the right things, they came to pass. Some of us know that even the aspects of even our school fees getting paid, it will take the hand of God. And for parents who had little faith and took their kids to small schools, somehow you'd get school fees for that small school. But for those who had greater faith and took their kids to bigger schools, shout out to my dad. There's a way that school fees also gets provided for. When you get to campus, and for people who have finished college also, there's a way the kind of house that you start living in, you get provision for that much, and not more, but for that much. So somehow, when you have a vision in business, there's a way that you also think along the lines of, how can I finance this vision? And the bigger the vision, the better. Because you know that at Altocom, we have been having a vision for Africa, having a footprint in the entire Africa. And one of the beautiful things that happened to us in our last masterclass, of course, is that we had people logging in from Uganda, from Rwanda, and I think we had a guy from the US. Of course, the US now is exceeding expectations. We are targeting Africa. But there's a way when you have a vision, things start aligning. For some reason, I believe there's God in it. Things start aligning. When you have a big vision, you think big and you start engaging big, and you sort of increase your network to people who are big also. And so when you have a big vision, the natural result is that there will be big provision progressively. Somehow it works. It's hard to explain it in detail, but somehow it works. For a person who has a small vision, small shop, you are probably going to remain there in that comfort zone, but you have a big vision. I mean, I've always believed that think big, start small. Think big, start small. Just start. Yes.
Think big, start small. Just start. And that is how we conclude this video today, that just start. You have been having a vision, you have been having a dream to start a business. You will only start when you start. Put yourself out there and start your business. So we meet on the next. My name is Lilian Wairimu. Bye.